Okay, so the year is 2020, and with my free time from COVID, I've completed playing the Souls series. Now, let me tell you that after playing these games, they meant a lot to me. I barely knew a thing about Dark Souls before I picked it up, and I can't say I was expecting anything other than a notoriously difficult game either. But the value that this series brought to me was immense in many ways. There was the fact that it brought my friends and I closer together as we summoned each other for each and every boss along the way, or the presence of such a strong message that failure is necessary to improve that really resonated with me. And even the super small lore related things like seeing the name of a boss revealed as I stepped into its arena. So, when the announcement of a new game popped up on my YouTube feed, the excitement rose up in me higher than Melania's grab. I was hyped for Elden Ring. So of course, when release day came, I jumped in head first. I had pre-ordered the game and was ready for what my gaming experience had been leading me up to. Everything I loved about these games, how perfectly crafted each moment felt, the way I would try harder in my day-to-day life, remembering how many times I died to that one boss before succeeding, the mystery of uncovering the lore and what it meant to me. Once I started Elden Ring, I felt that familiar thrill, stepping into a brand new world, taking note of the small details. And now I had knowledge of how these games worked, so I could analyze it with a new perspective. But alas, something started feeling off the more hours I sunk in. I noticed the beauty of the open world, the intricate designs, the staggering bosses, but the connection I'd been hoping for was elusive. I found myself searching for that same rush, that same sense of wonder, but it kept slipping away. I thought maybe I wasn't engaging with the game properly, or maybe I wasn't playing the right way. But the more I trekked on, the more distant it felt. I wanted to recreate that pure, unfiltered joy from the Souls series. Yet the harder I tried, the more hollow the experience became. And of course, this is before I could have realized it, but that itself seemed to be the issue. I had expectations for how I wanted my experience to be, which made me enjoy it less. It's not even that Elden Ring was failing to meet my expectations. It was exceeding them from an objective standpoint. But having these expectations at the forefront of my mind prevented me from being present enough to even experience what I was looking for. When I evidently became aware of the fact that I wasn't enjoying my experience to the degree I wanted, I scoured my flawed mind for reasons. I was cluelessly searching, trying to find an explanation, trying to find a way I could feel the same way I felt when I first started playing these games. But I mean, that's so ironic now when I think about it. In the past, I never had expectations for the Souls games, and that's why I enjoyed them in the first place. There was no perfect timing, no fear of spoilers. I didn't really care all too much beforehand, and that's what helped my experience as it went on. I was being present. It was genuine. Because if each experience was made in an attempt to replicate the one before it, it becomes a paradox. Genuine moments don't play out on demand of the last. It simply doesn't work that way. There are a couple ways I've looked at this, and either way, this idea of consciously or subconsciously comparing situations just doesn't work out for the better. I think comparing a situation so heavily to your current, regardless of whether the current is, in your eyes, better or worse than the original, will only lead you to finding at least something you're missing. It's okay to have an attachment. It's okay to live an experience through a certain lens, but there's a way to take it too far, and in doing so get caught up in your own head rather than the present situation. The other outlook has to do with reflection in general. Reflecting is something you do after an experience. It's not a way of dwelling on and guiding the way you go through something. It's entirely independent from the act of experience itself. I was reflecting in the moment, anticipating a certain feeling, and thus leading myself towards an inevitable comparison. Thankfully, my experience with Elden Ring didn't end with a half-baked impression. 2 years after completing the main game, the Shadow of the Erdtree DLC was released. This announcement made me reflect on my earlier, less than ideal relationship with the game, but also gave me a reason to dive back in. And I did. To my surprise, I enjoyed it much more than my original playthrough. This time around, I had no expectations, and I wasn't actively trying to avoid having any, which would have been self-contradictory. The experience felt simpler, and I was able to enjoy each moment as it came. By the time the DLC was released, and I was able to get to it, I could experience the new content with that same fresh perspective. But what had changed? Why was it easier not to have expectations this time around? Looking back, I think the answer lies in self-love. Let me explain. When I first played Dark Souls, I had two things: no expectations and only a limited sense of self-love. I wasn't looking for anything in particular from the game, yet it ended up bringing me a feeling of joy that I didn't expect, but was grateful for. That experience, though subtle, nudged me towards a bit more happiness and self-acceptance. When I came to Elden Ring though, things were different. This time I had two different things: expectations and a conscious awareness of my lack of self-love. I knew that I was missing something within, and I hoped the gaming experience might somehow breach that gap. So I went into it searching for an external source of fulfillment, a sense of validation or joy that I hadn't fully found within myself. Needless to say, things worked out this time because I approached the game with a more defined idea of my self-love. In any case where I hadn't, I would still be able to enjoy it, so long as the expectations weren't there to hold me back. Anyway, this video isn't meant to be a guide on how to enjoy things. It's just a means of me telling my own story about a personal experience I have with an amazing game. If any of you watching have some sort of meaningful experience with a piece of media or a video game or anything else, then please feel free to share. I would genuinely love to read them. With that said, have a great one, and I'll catch you on the flip.